BBC4 Collections, specially chosen programmes from the BBC archive. For this collection, Sir David Attenborough has chosen documentaries from the start of his career. More programmes on this theme and other BBC4 collections are available on BBC iPlayer.
This is a sacred place, a cave sacred to the Aborigines of this part of northern Australia. Here they come to perform their rituals. The clefts here are filled with the bones of their dead, and these rocks they have decorated until they glow with the colours of 100 upon 100 of paintings. Some of these paintings are undoubtedly very old. The local people don't even know who made these. They explain them by saying that they're the self-portraits of a spirit people, the Mimi. The Mimi have extremely thin bodies. They're the legs, the torso, and the arms. So thin, in fact, that they can't go out in a high wind, as they might blow away or their frail bodies be broken. But they live and they hunt and they eat just like ordinary Aborigines. And this one has got a fan made from a goose's wing in this hand, and in the other hand, a woomera, a spear thrower, in which he's holding a great long two-pronged spear. These are benevolent spirits, but these, painted not in white but in red, are extremely evil. These are women. There are her legs, her torso, her arms, and her head. And these steal the souls of the sick and roast them and eat them. And in her hands she is holding a loop of string, which is a magical device to enable her to travel silently throughout the night. The Mimis live in clefts of rock all around here, but you never see them. And the reason? Because the Mimis, whenever they see someone coming, can blow on the surface of the rock parts, the Mimi slips inside and disappears. Remarkable though this type of painting is, there's another type of painting here which is perhaps even more extraordinary, and this has been made comparatively recently. Here is an example of it, a turtle. And this turtle is painted in a style which is quite different. The artist is showing not just what he sees, but what he knows is there. For inside the animals that are painted in this style, you can see their heart and their stomach and their gut, their skeleton and their muscles. There are also barramundi, the best tasting of all the local fish, and kangaroos with their skeletons and internal organs clearly shown, and among the animals stenciled handprints and strange enigmatic designs of human-like figures. Precisely because these paintings are so recent, they have a particular fascination, for in many ways they are similar to the first paintings mankind ever made during the Stone Age, 20,000 years ago in the caves of Europe. Both prehistoric and Aboriginal paintings show similar subjects. Both are often superimposed haphazardly, one on top of the other. Most important of all, both were painted by people living at much the same stage of technological development. For the Aborigines are still wandering hunters with no settled villages, no knowledge of agriculture, and no herds or flocks. No one can ever be certain why prehistoric man produced his astonishing art. But we can discover how and why these designs were made, for the Aborigines still paint. From them, therefore, we may be able to get some insight into the very origins of art. The most accomplished painter we met was named Magani. He lives in one of the remotest parts of Australia, Arnhem Land, a vast empty wilderness on the northern tropical coast. His tribal territory is flat bush country with few rocks or caves, so Magani has to find something other than stone on which to paint, and he uses the bark of a kind of eucalyptus tree called the stringy bark. He was very particular in selecting his tree. Most he rejected at a glance as being unsuitable. Either they were not big enough, or had been damaged by a bushfire, or were infested with wood-boring insects. Even those which seemed at first sight to be suitable might prove to be faulty, with bark that cracked or was too thin. And he might have to half-strip 4 or 5 trees before he at last found one which would provide him with the wide, smooth, flexible sheet of bark, free of knotholes, which he wanted for his painting. For further treatment, the bark had to be taken back to his home, a small shelter of branches in a clearing. He lives quite close to a newly founded government station, but this, in fact, has hardly changed his traditional way of life. And it's in a place like this that he prefers to sleep and live and paint. The bark must first be stripped of its rough outside fibrous layers. As it dries in the hot sun, the bark curls into a tube on which it's quite impossible to paint. To make it straight, it must be heated over a fire, and the strips of the outer bark provide a convenient fuel. It will lie on the ground, weighted with stones, for 2 or 3 days, so that it hardens into a flat sheet. This, then, is Magani's canvas. His colours are also found close by. They are mineral ochres, and the deposits in which they occur are well known. Indeed, sometimes these sites are recognized as the places where, during the creation, the blood of one of the ancestral spirits was spilt and soaked into the ground. Among the rocks, he finds little pebbles of iron oxide, and he tests the quality of their color by scratching them on a stone. These provide him with both red and yellow pigments. One of Magani's helpers and close friends, Billy, is also out in the bush. He is gathering orchids, for these too are necessary for the painting. The juice of their tubers makes an excellent fixative which prevents the paint from flaking easily. The method of using the orchid is quite simple. You bite it, dip it into water, and then smear a rough outline of the design you're about to paint. Magani has 4 colors at his disposal: red and yellow iron oxides, a black made from charcoal, and white from china clay, which he collects from pits dug in the mangrove swamps down by the seashore. His brushes are also extremely simple. This one is simply a twig with a bird end, and he uses it for making thick lines and for stippling. He also has another stick, the end of which he has chewed until it's widely splayed, and this he uses for putting on broad strokes of color. A third, and the one that requires most skill in using, is a twig with a few trailing fibers tied to the end, and this he employs for the delicate task of cross-hatching. Everyone in the neighborhood freely admitted that Magani was the best artist in the tribe, but that doesn't mean that he was the only one. Indeed, we met no man who, when asked, did not agree immediately that he was a painter. Painting for these people is not something you look at, but something that everybody does, as a matter of course. Often men would come and sit by Magani in a sociable way, take up, unasked, one of his brushes, and start work on some corner of the bark that was blank. But there were few who had the skill, the aptitude, or the passion to paint as intensively as Magani did. He worked fast and with great neatness and assurance. It seemed as though he had clearly in his mind the completed design. And although he occasionally made mistakes in outline and rubbed part of it out with a wetted finger, he never changed his mind about the position of a figure. I asked Megani why he painted. His first explanation was a very simple one, because he could sell his paintings at the government station. But this couldn't be a complete answer, for he and his people were painting similar designs on bark long before there were any Europeans here to buy them. Why? Because, he said, he liked doing so. And for some time, this was the only explanation I could find. But later, I was to get a deeper insight into his motives. I was to discover, in a dramatic and unexpected way, that Megani didn't always paint merely as a way of passing the time or amusing himself, but that his art played an integral and vital part in tribal ritual. At the end of a week, the whole bark was covered with designs. Some of them were easily recognizable, but there were others that were more mysterious. Mickey, tell me about these pictures. What's that?
Dog.
A dog. And here?
Heart.
Heart. Heart. And this?
Cat, you know.
Gut. Gut. I savvy. Tell me about this place here.
2 women.
Two
and 1
women?
boy.
Yeah.
And making fire.
Make him a fire.
Making fire.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, lay down like that now.
Oh, they lay down. Yeah.
All right.
And what are these?
Blanket listen.
A lizard with a big beard on it.
Big ear old.
We call him frill lizard.
That's right.
Is that him?
Yes, sir.
Now what's that for?
Little guana.
Little goanna.
Mm.
You go, what's that?
Like
Oh, you make a noise like that?
yeah.
Long night time?
Short night.
Hmm?
Before they let him talk.
Oh, yeah. Before the light, he
Mm,
talks.
mm.
Yes. And what is for?
Guana. Little guana.
Little goanna. And long here? You tell me a story along here.
This one,
Yeah.
he go look around for wallaby.
He looks around for a wallaby. Yeah.
Get him womara.
Gets his spear thrower.
And walk a spear.
Gets his spear thrower and
Right.
throws a spear.
We see him this wallaby.
And he kills the wallaby.
I'd walk him up and kill him.
And what's this?
Bush tucker.
Bush tucker.
Bush tucker.
A yam.
That's right.
And this fella?
Emio.
Emu. The big bird. Huh?
But, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And down here, what happened here?
Why you talk so soft? You don't good. If we talk hard, might be him hearing me.
If we talk hard, who might hear?
Hearing me, young boy and little boy and woman.
Young boy and little boy and woman, and they mustn't hear?
That's right.
What is this fella Yolongoa that's so secret?
That you don't go to pushing it in Marayan.
Business in Malayan with corroboree.
That's right.
This spirit?
Because God made
God made this
Yes.
thing, huh? Yolongoa where? Over this way?
yeah.
In the bush?
That's right.
Maybe you think he all right for me to see him? Me no woman? All right for me to go?
All right.
You show me?
If you like, you can go.
You take me?
And you look that one, you don't go.
You show me Yolongoa.
Yes.
Good, Mickey. Thank you very much. We go. I had little idea as to what this Yolongoa could be. Obviously, it was a spirit, but equally clearly, it was also some material but highly sacred object concealed away in the bush, which only privileged people were allowed to see. As I followed Megani, I didn't know what to expect. And then, half a mile away, we came to a small shelter of branches. Beside it sat Jarabili, Megani's helper, the man who had collected the orchids. And Jarabili was busy painting a 10-foot pole.
This Yolongoa.
Yes.
It was magnificently decorated,
Blow down it?
but it was only after I had looked at it for some minutes that I suddenly realized that it was hollow. One end of it had been plastered with beeswax and fashioned into a mouthpiece. Yulungur was a trumpet, and to confirm this, Magani showed me how it was played. Day after day, Magani and Jarabili had been coming here secretly to work on the trumpet. Along its length, they had painted designs of goannas, large lizards, and the symbol they used was exactly the same as the one Magani had painted on the bark. Goannas, clearly, played an important part in the Yulungur cult. But how, I did not yet know. Among the goannas, there also appeared another symbol that I recognized. This was the design that I had seen on the bark and asked Magani about, the clue that had led us here in the first place. This was the emblem of the Yulungur spirit itself. Although a great deal of work had already been lavished on the trumpet, there was much more yet to be done. Magani said that all these preparations had to be made each time the ceremony was held. I asked him why, if the ceremony was repeated again and again, they couldn't use the same trumpet. And he replied that after the ritual was over, the trumpet was quite worthless, and they threw it away. Usually, they buried it in a sandbank down by the river, so that women and children wouldn't see it. Sometimes, he said, they might dig it up again on a later occasion and repaint it, but usually they didn't bother and started afresh with a new piece of wood. The act of painting, it seemed, was an end in itself, a part of the ritual. Already, the trumpet was a sacred object. Every now and then, work stopped, and Magani lay down to blow the trumpet while Jarabili sang a chant to the Yulungur spirit. For each of the designs had to be sung in to make them good. Once, as I sat beside it, watching Magani paint, I unthinkingly reached across it to pick up something. Magani reproved me. It was wrong and disrespectful to reach across Yulungur in this way. On another occasion, Magani's eyes suddenly filled with tears, and he had to put down his brush. No one spoke for several minutes. Later, I asked Jarabili why Magani had been so deeply moved, and he replied that the last time Magani had painted such a trumpet was for the funeral ceremony of his father. And so, day after day, Magani and Jarabili continued to work. When they left each evening to return to their families, the trumpet was carefully hidden away in the back of the shelter and covered with bark and leaves, so that no woman or child or man from another clan should set eyes on it. When all the painting was at last finished, the trumpet was still not complete. Bands of scarlet feathers from the breast of a parakeet had to be carefully bound round each end. And now, once more, a song had to be chanted to Yulungur to sanctify the completed trumpet. The ritual painting of Yulungur has been going on for over a week now in that secret shelter away in the bush. And for much of that time, we've been sitting with the men, watching the painting, and trying to discover the legends that surround Yulungur. It seems that in the dream time, that's to say before there were any people in this land, there were two ancestral sisters. Their names were Boaleri and Misilgoe. And they came walking through this country, naming the animals and the plants as they came. Misilgoe was expecting a child. Boaleri gathered a lot of food, including a lot of goannas, for their evening meal, and they went down to a water hole by the Goida River, which is just over there. And there, Misilgoe had her baby. It was a boy, and it was called Jangalan. Unknown to the sisters, the water hole was the home of a great serpent, and in the depths of the water, he heard the noise of the sisters, and he came out. Then there followed a great battle. And at the end of this battle, Boaleri, Misilgoe, the two sisters, and the baby, and all the goannas were eaten by the serpent. And the serpent, whose name was Yulungur, then looked up into the sky and blew, and the sky filled with heavy clouds, and then there was a great storm which lasted for a long time. And Yulungur, the serpent, arched up in the sky like a rainbow, and he spoke to the other serpents in this country, telling them of what had happened. And his voice was thunder, and his tongue was lightning. When the rains came to the end, Yulungur returned to the water hole, and before he disappeared, he spat out the two sisters and the baby boy and all the goannas. It seems, in fact, that Yulungur is the symbol of the rainy season that is due to begin here in about 3 or 4 weeks' time. He figures as a great trumpet in nearly all the important ceremonies of these particular tribes around here. The one that they're preparing for now is one which is carried out by the men of the Goanna totem, the Goanna clan. It is not a rain-making ceremonial, but a ceremonial in which they reenact the legends and observe the secret designs and the secret dances so that the young men of the tribe may know of the cult of Yulungur. During the dance, the trumpet Yulungur will emerge for the first time out of this shelter, and it will eat up the Goanna men, symbolized by the trumpet being passed over them. And then, at the end of the dance, the rains will come to an end, and the men themselves will leap out as goannas that are being regurgitated to take their life in this land. But before any of that can happen, the men must have painted on their flesh the secret symbol of the goanna. They painted the goanna in exactly the same way as the one we had seen first on the bark painting and then on the Yulungur trumpet. The shading, the representation of the heart and gut, the position of the legs, all were the same. The execution of each design lasted as long as an hour, and while it went on, the men lay motionless with eyes closed, almost as though they were in a trance. They had assembled here early in the morning, but it wasn't until 7 hours later that all were decorated. They sat about in a group, awaiting the beginning of their act of worship, when together they would enter the shelter and lie motionless in the shade, waiting to be summoned by the snake. As the voice of the snake sounded, so it called out the Goanna men from the shelter of branches that represented the sacred well by the Goida River. As they came, they postured before the snake, rearing up as a goanna will do when alarmed. In groups of 2 or 3, they crawled out from the shelter to kneel in the dust in front of the roaring snake. At last, all the men have been called out, and Yulungur the python passes over them, swallowing them. And now the moment comes for their regurgitation. So Mikani showed us that painting for him and his people played an essential part in their lives, a vital element in their magical and religious beliefs. But whereas bark painting and body painting and painting of objects like Yulungur still goes on, most of the cave painting, it seems, came to an end about 50 years ago. But you can still find old men who will tell you that the reason these cave paintings were made was also a magical one. They believed that when they painted the picture of a barramundi fish, they were working a magic which ensured that the barramundi fish would continue to be abundant. But are all these paintings magical? Well, here and there in these caves, you can find a painting where it seems as though the artist made it simply because he was noting down something that interested or amused him. Here is an old flintlock pistol that possibly dates from the time when the white man first came to this country. And elsewhere you can see pictures of rifles and ships. Maybe this is art for art's sake. Certainly, Mikani and the painters like him make their bark paintings not for any magical reason, but simply because they enjoy doing so and because they can sell them. Already their paintings are becoming more widely appreciated, and the few examples that come out of this part of the world are eagerly bought by private collectors and museums and art galleries for ever-increasing prices. Maybe as the demand increases, their work will deteriorate and become slick and mechanical. But so far, that hasn't happened. So far, although many of the painters of Arnhem Land are increasingly in contact with the outside world, their lives are still governed by their tribal rituals, and they continue to employ the symbols prescribed by their beliefs. Many of their paintings, though stylized, are easily understood. Yulungur the snake appears again and again. The zigzag borders framing this painting prove to be the snake's body. But often the designs are so stylized that they are totally unrecognizable except to the initiated. These are the tracks of birds running between the bulbs of water lilies. Sometimes the patterns are totally abstract and geometrical, and the finished composition bears a strong resemblance to the pictures of some modern European abstract painters. And so the paintings of the artists of Arnhem Land, which are so intimately associated with their tribal beliefs, not only hark back to the very origins of art in prehistory, but seem also to have foreshadowed some of the latest and most sophisticated styles of 20th century painting.